rights are a great media word. I think they're something that politicians like to use negatively or positively. I think women's rights are not enforced. I do think that it's a hot button topic that a lot of people like to talk about, that they like to, especially people who don't know what they're talking about, like to talk about, that they like to go on and on about and prophesize. But I think women's rights, specifically to like healthcare, are different than human rights, because women have different healthcare needs than men do, and I do not think that they are. I don't think that they are something that is focused on like they should be. Like I said, I think that they're a hot button topic. I think a lot of people like to talk about them, but I don't think that they're focused on. I think that people talk, but they don't do a lot about it. We have a lot of women who, for instance, myself, I have no health insurance. So if I were to get sick, or if I were to, God forbid, get pregnant, I would have no way of getting health insurance for myself or the child. And I think that is something that needs to be focused on because of the children aspect of it, not necessarily because I'm a woman, but because I would be bringing a child into this. But that's also why I think women's health rights and women's rights in general need to be focused on. Women are paid less in the workforce. Women are discriminated against. Women are just solely because of the fact that they are a woman. Women, I'm a non-traditional student, so I've been out in the workforce. I did work for 20 plus years in mostly the IT field, which is heavily dominated by men. I personally never experienced something that I felt was true harassment or true trying to keep me down, but I did see it happen in others, mostly because I just didn't let it happen. That's just my personality, but I did see it happen to a lot of women. So I do think women's rights are something that actually needs to be focused on, not just talked about. Human rights, I think, every human being has innate rights. They have the right to education, they have the right to food, they have right to shelter, they have right to safety, they have right to, be able to speak and be able to gather, all the things that I think as human beings we should have the right to do. I don't understand why those overlying rights for humans are not a subset of what women also should receive, but they are not. We've had to fight to get voting rights. We've had to fight to get health care specifically for women. We've had to fight to get equal pay, which we still don't have. We've had to fight for those things that are overlying when we say human rights are actually men's rights.
My opinion, well, first of all, I grew up, I was pretty much the only child, but I was raised by a lot of females. I didn't really have that male figure in my life. So starting work at the age of 16, and being almost 21 now, I've had a lot of work experience in a lot of different companies. The first company that I ended up working with was a grocery store in Kansas City. Majority of the coworkers were white. There was probably about 2 others besides me in the whole company that were actually somewhat African American, and none of them worked in the upper hand, the customer service desk, one of the managers or any of those things. The store manager was actually a male. All the other managers were males. The customer service desk was all females, and then the cashiers and stuff were a variety. Grocery was mostly men. Sometimes, depending on seniority, there was like 2 females that have been working there for years that'll sometimes do the grocery part. I was mainly a cashier, and I was also a courtesy clerk. I worked there for about 2 years. The company, I kind of feel like it was terrible. They kind of thought old generation thoughts, so I didn't really agree with that, considering that I'm the new generation. But now currently working 3 jobs, I caught my eye because the store that I'm working with now in Topeka, the store manager is female. Some of the managers are men and women. It's very diverse, and with that store in particular, I don't see an issue. But I feel like it just depends on old generation versus new generation. Some people have issues with the corporate companies and how they work, but I feel like that's the old generation versus the new generation. I feel like if the new generation was the corporate companies, there may be a chance for an involvement with the company with with race and with gender. So having said that, growing up, I feel like there was a lot of females that were getting promoted before I did, and I was working there first. But so they are, I feel like they are moving up in the chain.
Whether it's being enforced or being recognized enough, maybe not to the way it should be. I think the younger generation has a better grasp than the older generation. There's always going to be your traditional folks who might think women should be doing certain things like maybe serving in combat or things like that. However, I think that's definitely come a long way since being a time pretty much when women were considered second-class citizens. So I think that the younger generation definitely has a better grasp and understanding of how to enforce women's rights, and it goes on the board across everything: women's rights, gay rights, abortion rights, whatever you want to call it. Anything that challenges what's considered traditional and the status quo. Human rights can be defined as anything that protects race, religion, a person's ethnicity, anything that does not make them subject to prejudice or discrimination, like in the workforce, for example. An employee who gets discriminated because of their religious background or their ethnicity, that's a violation of human rights. So anything that falls under a person's right to have their humility, their dignity, and their civility, that's what that falls under. So. Because it goes beyond outside America, obviously. What you see in America is completely different than you see in third world countries where there's genocide of people. Like, I think a great example would be the genocide from 1994, the one in Africa with the Tutsis and the Hutus. Mm-hmm. That's a great example right there. In other parts of the world, women still have to wear veils around their head. They can't show their hair, can't show their face. If they do, that's an offense. And the question is, now I understand that's their culture. That's how Western culture and Eastern and those type of cultures definitely do differ. But that might come off to somebody as a question of, is that right? What you're making your people do.